Welcome back to the Business and Banter Podcast. For the people who normally watch at home, I'm sure you can see something different on the screen. Today's guest is the definition of effortless success. In high school, he was a pro Call of Duty player and launched a thriving photography business. Now he's a musician with over 2.1 million streams, a reseller with 33,000 items sold, and a social media force on Instagram and TikTok under Kiddo the One. He's also a great friend and one of my go-to people for big ideas and honest business chats. So, Kiddo, thank you for taking the time to be here. There you going.
Oh, do we just cut out? No, we're here. Thank you very much, Sam. I really appreciate that intro. You're making me sound too good. So I'm just happy to be here, and it's been a long time copying, and I'm really looking forward to talking with you both today.
Thanks,
I'm
Kiddo.
excited. I have never actually gotten to speak to you other than on Instagram DMs a bit, but I've been following your journey and obviously having a look at everything you're doing. And I'm really excited to get your perspective. I think it's so different to what a lot of us have. So I'm excited to get into it today.
Absolutely. Look forward to it.
Cool. I thought we'd kick off, Kiddo, with your Call of Duty days. I'm really curious, how did that happen? And what did the experience teach you about competition and discipline?
So mum worked at KFC full time. I'm an only child raised by a single mother. So that meant that for a lot of my time as a teenager, I just spent it, at home alone. So my entry into playing professional Call of Duty actually came through a forum called cybergamer.com.au. And essentially what people would do is they'd post on this forum to match up and play with other people. Traditionally in Call of Duty, you would just play publicly and on the console. But for this forum specifically, you were playing with players that were playing for money. You were playing with players that were playing in competition. So what I actually first started doing was doing graphic design. I taught myself through YouTube, and I was making forum signatures for players in the community. And then naturally, you talk to people, you get invited to some matches, you start playing and taking it more seriously. And then, I was spending a lot of time home alone. I wasn't doing anything else. And so I guess my first money that I made on the internet came from graphic design. And then shortly after that, it was from winning Call of Duty games and going to tournaments and LAN parties and events where I was sponsored to go and play Call of Duty.
Wow. I had no idea that you started off in graphic design. That's just like another notch on your belt. Hadley's looking for a logo. Perhaps you could help her out.
Just load up the AI, Hadley. Load up the AI and then just tweak it, and then you're good to go.
100%. I'm putting it into Claude. I'm buying a van, and a friend of mine suggested I should call it Vanly because I'm Hanley and Vanly, and we're trying to get bumper stickers. But that's off topic, just in case anyone wants to send it.
So, Kiddo, do you reckon those gaming skills or mindset have helped you in your business throughout the years? Businesses, actually.
100%. So it's funny, when you sent me these questions and I told you this, I was like, man, my upcoming content that I want to make is more focused on this chapter because it really set a foundation. And the most ironic part of it is the only reason I quit Call of Duty was because my school basically said, hey, if you don't quit, we've been monitoring your Twitter, of all things. We've been monitoring your social media. I'm like 15 at the time. They're like, if you don't quit, we're essentially going to suspend you or potentially expel you. And I'm 2 years, this is grade 11, going into grade 12. And, I just wanted to finish school. Mum was always on the fence about it. And she said to me, one of her regrets was I wish I just let you keep playing, because a lot of the people, some of the people that I was playing with at that level, at one point we were top 3 in Australia and we're playing 4v4. So there's 12 players that are the best. And so a lot of those players actually went to America shortly after, a year or two after, and were on full-time income playing Call of Duty. But the biggest transferable skills, I think, from that is we used to play customs, and what it would do, the easy way to explain that is you would get paired with random people at different skill levels, and you would just practice. And so it's 4v4, and you just get paired with everybody in the community, and you're just constantly playing. But what I learned is that if I learned how to play against every type of skill level, that I would take transferable skills and learn from everybody. And so, especially when it comes to business and reselling specifically, it's easy for us to learn from the best. It's easy for us to learn from the YouTubers. But what I would actually recommend as well is to learn from people below your level, people at your level, people slightly above. Learn from everybody, take information in from everywhere, and also just spend raw time on the game that is business, spend raw time doing the reps. And from experience and from consistent learning, it's very hard to lose.
I love that. I didn't realize that your school made you quit. That's crazy. Was it due to the hours that you were spending overnight playing?
I mean, yeah. Look, so there's a lot to do with like the sleeping pattern of teenagers as well. Like if you do some reading and some deep dives into that, like teenagers aren't supposed to be woken up, that early, and so you're sending kids essentially into school, into a learning environment, sleep deprived. Like there's a reason why teenagers naturally wake up later. So for me, like I just didn't have that balance between here's this thing that's paying me and then I really love doing and I'm passionate about, and then I'm also going to school where people are telling me to tuck my shirt in and wear the tie. And it wasn't like I was like bad at school either. Like in grade 9, I was top 1% in Australia across, the NAPLAN testing, which is the National Australian Wide Testing. So it wasn't like I didn't like school. I always loved learning. I just think that, I just wasn't a huge fan of some of the teachers. And I never say like school and I were just not compatible, to say the least.
I feel that.
Yeah.
Is that why you started your photography business so young?
Yeah. So it's really funny. So I get forced to quit Call of Duty, and then I'm like, well, let me like be social. Let me start my first business. I thought this is a great way to like start going to parties and meet people and like be invited here, there, and everywhere. So I got a camera, and then I basically just hit up one of my mates who was throwing a house party, and he was like, here, let me introduce you to this guy. And he was the dude that was like always throwing house parties. And so just that lesson of, okay, there's key decision makers wherever we are in business. If we can just go straight to that person or 1 degree from that person, then we can instantly open up opportunity in our lives. And it's one of those big things. It's like we can go through gatekeepers. We can go through talking to 10 different people, or you can just go straight to the source, cut out the middleman, talk to the right person, boom, you have opportunities.
You talk about that a lot with sourcing, actually.
Yeah.
I'm interested to know that, like, coming from the gaming, which is obviously quite social, there's a social media aspect to it, your team playing a thing. Then you go into the photography, which again, with the view of being social, being in these house parties, I see a social aspect to everything you do. Especially things in the business side that I see to be more lone wolf kind of. You tend to have this ability to make everything more social and work that to your advantage. Do you think that's just naturally in your personality, or do you set out to do that to generate more opportunities?
This is a great question. Okay, let me think. So I think that it all comes down to self-awareness, right? We start off with the resources that we have, and we need to make the best of that, make the best of what we have. And then once we've done that, we get given more. So apart from being social, like, as I said, raised by a single mother, only child, like I didn't have the luxury of having siblings to, hone my social skills with. So naturally, if I'm like a mix between an introvert and an extrovert, like I'm going to put myself in situations where I can, get that social interaction. And so I think that, as a teenager, I went from Call of Duty, which was me staying inside playing games all the time, but I had 3 really close teammates who were basically like brothers to me. We were spending, 8 hours a day, and then we go and travel, and we take, a 12-hour travel trip for us to get to the place. Like, we're always together. So it was like a crew. And then I guess when it comes to, the parties, I just always knew that if you're valuable to other people and you give other people a reason to be in that spot, they will always invite you back. They will always have you around. And so I think that, for people that maybe are less socially inclined, what I would say is don't worry about being, a smooth talker. Don't worry about being extroverted. Focus on being useful. The moment you're useful to an environment, then opportunity just opens up for you, makes everything easy. And you don't need to talk heaps to do that. Just be useful.
That's incredible. You also don't need to be what everyone wants you to be and liked in that matter. You just have to add value. And I think that's so overlooked, especially in today's culture, where we overlook what's popular for what's actually valuable. So I think that's really great advice.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Do you think that all of that experience young really has helped you later in life as well? Like in terms of being able to network, find deals, like advertise yourself within your music space?
I think a lot of social situations come back to like this mental model of the high school party. So if you look at like the status hierarchy of the party, it's like you've got the person throwing the party, you've got the entertainment. So that's like the DJ. Then you've got the media, which is the photography. And so you have like at the top, you have like the host is always going to control the cash flow and make everything happen. And then you've got, you know, promoters. Then you've got the people that you invite to the party. And so, I mean, the biggest thing that you guys have done with this podcast is you're essentially hosting the party. You're saying, hey guys, if somebody is in the reselling community and they're taking things seriously, come on here and come have a conversation with us. And you give people that platform. So I keep returning back to that mental model of like, this is a high school party. Who are the people making decisions? Who are the people that I want to talk to? And it's not just a status thing either. It's like, if I go to a cool party, who am I going to meet? There's always that opportunity to meet people who I would never have met unless I went to that event, went to that place, and have taken that opportunity.
Yeah, especially with what we do in terms of like sourcing and networking, like that sort of mental model of mindset, view, whatever you want to call it, would really separate you from other people, because you're not just going to look at them as like a what can you do for me manner. Like that's I think where a lot of people trip up in reselling is they're like, I want backroom access because it benefits me, but there's no like reciprocation from them really. Like we're cherry picking so that they don't get full price sales.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of that as well, and something that I've noticed is there is a sense of entitlement. I think that people go into these situations first day, first ask and ask for the world. Whereas like when it comes to somebody we're attracted to, a date, we're not going to ask for the world on the first date. You need to take them out first. You know what I mean? And so this habit of like a reseller walking in and being like, hey guys, do you want to get married? Is like, that's never going to work. And so when it comes to sourcing as well, I always say is like, look for who and not what. A lot of people over optimize for these are the things that I want. This is the price that I want it at. And that's fine to have that specificity and clarity. But at the end of the day, if you just go looking for the relationship, if you go looking for the person who can set you up, you know, we're not looking at $5 on this item, $10 on this item, $100 on this item. What we're looking at is $10,000 relationships, $100,000 relationships, $1 million relationships. And so that's how I focus on, you know, building what is ultimately the foundations of my business, which is treating entrepreneurship as a tribe. And you have to look after the hunters, you have to look after the suppliers, or else, you know, your tribe's not going to last very long and your business is not going to last very long.
I have a note on this because I watched some of your content where you spoke about this a bit. And I think that the thing that is different with you and different with a lot of other people who tell us to look for the people, not for the items, because it's used quite a lot, is you have an understanding of the fact that that's a long game, where most people are looking for instant gratification. Most people want to, you said, walk into that op shop and be like, this is who I am, this is what I do. Now we're solid for life, right? Where you're more into building the long game and understanding that this is going to take time. The first 10 times I'm just going to greet you. The next 10 times I'm going to ask how your kids are. And when I then try to reflect that back onto our business, all the sourcing I have now, the regular sourcing is relationships that's been built over years. And I think that's the key difference with the message you're sending and that I'm getting from you versus some of the other people, is you are really promoting a long-term goal rather than just go out and ask people and get what you want.
Absolutely. I think it also comes down to how long do you plan to do this and how seriously do you take your reputation? Because if you don't take your reputation seriously, you can rip off the first person that you speak to. But if you take your reputation seriously, you're going to approach business in a fundamentally different way, which is going to produce different results. So the long-term view and having an end game in mind that goes beyond the business is definitely going to protect you and give you the clarity to make better decisions if you are playing for the long game.
For sure. There's a lot of like self-respect that comes with that though. Like, and I think that that's something that from my perspective, like the way you carry yourself, like you hold yourself in such high standard and the way that you present yourself to other people is like displaying that and mirroring it to them so that they are attracted to you.
Thank you, Sam. I think I can't take credit for that. I think shout out to Mama Kiddo for that. You know, even if we didn't have money, even if we didn't have, you know, all the resources that other people had, she was always big on self-esteem and taking, you know, a lot of the love that unfortunately she didn't get as a kid, and instead like doing her best to give that to me and lift me up and really give me a strong sense of self so that, you know, I could find a way to, you know, improve our lives collectively.
Yeah. One of the things that you said to me at the start of the year, your goal was to retire your mother. Like, that's such a noble thing. I don't think I've ever heard another young man want to do that for their mother. It's really, like, I respect that heaps.
We're getting really close. We're getting really close. So hopefully our next conversation, I'm like, hey guys, here's the update. I think a big part of that as well is just, it's so important going back to, you know, thinking about an end game, but it's also about having a bigger goal in mind. At the end of the day, you know, I could be like a lot of people my age where I'm doing it for ego. I'm doing it to get this. I'm doing it to do that. But at the end of the day, on the days when it's hard, on the days where you don't feel like doing the work, on the days where everything is going against you and you're like, you know, I could just not do this today. I could just quit. You need to have a deeper reason that goes beyond the surface level, that goes beyond the material. And it's almost like a spiritual base in which I can pull energy from and be like, you know what, it doesn't matter. Mum's already worked 8 years at KFC. Me getting up to work on this business is nothing compared to that. So like, let me just get up and get this done. And so I'm constantly returning to that understanding and that frame of reference. And that gives me, you know, infinite energy and I can just keep going.
That's so important because I think that's why a lot of people experience burnout as well. If you're doing it for superficial reasons, those reasons burn out very quickly. And that's why you'll see a lot of turn and burning. In the reseller community, we're at peak and then we disappear, and we're at peak and we disappear. And I think if people spend a bit more time figuring out really what it is they're trying to achieve, there would be a lot less of that going on.
Absolutely. And I think you need a big North Star that scares you. Because if you, there's the other part of that as well is when you don't have a goal that's big enough, you need a massive goal because that's going to inspire you to really get after it. If we're just aiming to just get by, like the results we're going to get is probably like 50% of that. If our goal is to get really to set our lives up for the people around us and for ourselves, then, you know, we're going to approach the entire process differently.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I really liked your phrasing of it gives you the spiritual energy to tap into, which is just endless and abundance. I think I've never heard it phrased that way, but that is something I can really like get behind. Like if I have a goal that involves people external to me and like making their lives easier, making it better, it makes everything fall into just place. But I also am able to find flow so much easier, and therefore like the work is just easy because it's fast and effortless.
Absolutely. And when I say that as well, I don't mean to like turn it into something woo woo. I think just for me is like, it's just, there is a lot of practicality in doing it for somebody other than yourself. Because at the same time, like I want to be able to stay in the places I want. I want to be able to have the expensive dinners. I want to be able to live that life that as a kid I didn't get to experience. But at the same time, when you have that deeper reason, you know, yeah, you can just keep going.
For sure.
That is funny because the most successful, I'm lucky enough to know a lot of successful people and who's been able to sustain the success, not just get quick success and then and 99.9% of them, just like you, set out with a goal to be in service of someone else. So you want to serve your mom, and I want to serve my family and our security we're trying to build. And most people I know that tend to actually make it set out with a goal to be in service of someone else. And I think that's really striking. And it reflects in the way you treat your business. And I think it's inspirational to me.
Thank you, Hanley. And I also think, like Sam has said it before, but as much as we are in a product business and we're selling products on the internet, we're actually in a service business.
Yeah.
And if we can take that approach to what we're doing, no matter, you know, it doesn't matter what industry you're in, if you are in business, you are of service to other people. The moment that you forget that is when the business goes downhill. And the more that we can remind ourselves of, okay, I'm here to serve other people. Unironically, you know, it's on purpose that the more we give to other people is exactly what we get back. And so the more that we can continue to do that, you know, the more we're going to prosper at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Your vibe attracts your tribe, as they say. I've got a selfish question for you, and it's one that I've wanted to ask for a while. I'm curious as to how you balance your creativity side, so through your music and everything, with what people define as like the eBay grind hustle, because you do both like day in, day out with no effort.
So I was on the fence for a while. I was like, if I wanted to do music properly, I would have to quit eBay. And I realized that over time, what I was actually reaching for, the deeper reason, was actually self-acceptance. The biggest thing that we can realize is that we are not and will never be just one thing. We're not just the eBay seller. We're not just a mum. We're not just a wife. We're not just a husband. We're not just a brother or sister. We are many things at the same time. So why would it be any different when it comes to our passions and hobbies? The biggest thing I've learned is that no matter what you're doing, passion scales. So if you just continue to pursue curiosity, things you're naturally interested in, you'll find work ethic that you can't find anywhere else. And so if we just follow that passion, it doesn't matter whether we're doing 1 or 10 things at the same time. Like, and there's so many exceptions to this rule of like, oh, you've just got to focus on one thing. Like, it's just not the truth. Go and read Richard Branson's autobiography. Dude had like 20 businesses at the same time, right? Go and look at Benjamin Franklin, who was an absolute monster with the pen and who started like media subscription business and was writing and then was like in politics and like, and then you look at, recently I read R.M. Williams' story. A lot of people know him for his leather boots. Dude had gold mines and was pushing cattle. So you have all these multi-interests that people are just not aware of. And, you know, it comes and it returns back to this idea of like the Renaissance man or the Renaissance woman is like, you can have multi-interests. You can be a Leonardo da Vinci. And I guess one of the modern examples of this as well is like Childish Gambino. Like, dude is writing comedy. He's in movies. He's making music. He's made hits. It's like the moment you give yourself permission to be yourself is when you will tap into the things that make you stand out. And as a result, that's when the results come back and you start making true progress. So yeah, it was really self-acceptance. And then when it comes down to, you know, the balance of the work itself, what I would do and what I realized was, oh, hang on, if I just make my business better, I'll have unlimited time for music. The reason why a lot of people don't have passions and hobbies outside the business is because you're not good at your business yet. And maybe that's like brutal, honest truth, but it's something that I had to learn the hard way. Was like, the reason why I don't have free time to do the things I want to do is because I haven't done the work I need to do within my business. Or I know exactly what I need to do today and I'm just dawdling around. I'm on my phone. I'm clicking around. I'm watching YouTube. I'm not doing what I need to do. So if you want unlimited free time, start by prioritizing the levers in your business. There might be like 3 things you can think of that will actually move the needle. Apart from that, like there's a lot of things that we do in our businesses that just don't contribute to the end results that we want. And so we get caught in the busy work instead of doing the work that actually moves the needle on our business.
That's very powerful. Like,
we can just go home now, guys. That's all we have to say. That's the end goal. Just go do that. See you next week.
I don't think there will be a next week. It'll just be Kido by itself. Wow.
That is so true. So true.
If you were to say, like, arguably the 3 most common things that people could do to, like, move their business forward, like pull the lever, what do you think that the most common 3 things would be?
Okay, so I'm a big fan of Via Negativa, which is like a mental model that Steve Jobs was really, he was into. So if you look at your iPhone, how many buttons are on the iPhone?
No, on the side, there's like 4.
Exactly. And then we look at like a BlackBerry back in the day, had like 50. And so Via Negativa is this concept that you remove before you add. So a lot of people with their day, a lot of people with their business, they want to continually add things to their business. Like, oh, if I just add this part of the business, if I just sell to these people, if I just, no. Start at the very beginning, which is let me remove everything that's not supposed to be here. And if let me just focus on what I'm actually good at, on what I'm actually doing, on my niche, maybe it's just a simple matter of focusing on what actually matters. So I use Via Negativa, all the time. And it's not just like a business perspective as well. It's like, it could be as simple as, our workspaces. If they're messy today, let me just remove everything that's not supposed to be here. And that's going to give me so much clarity. And that's something I keep returning to, is clarity, is understanding where I'm going, because direction is way more important than speed. You can go fast nowhere. What's important is knowing exactly where you're going and continuing in that direction, even if you have to crawl, walk, run, sprint, whatever. As long as you've got direction and you continue in that direction, a year, 2, 3, 5 years from now, you'll be way closer to where you are than where you started. So that's the first one, Via Negativa. What was the question again, Sam?
What's the 3 things that people in their business could move the lever to improve? They're just
so
common.
the other thing I would say, and this is something I've done a lot more this year, which is cold outreach. The beautiful thing about, our business is that we can always get better prices for our sourcing. And if you don't think so, then that is a limiting belief, because there'll always be a bigger dog who wants to sell more volume. And so you can access economies of scale where you get into relationships where you're like, hey, I'm going to buy way more, and then you're going to give me a lower price for it. And those are the relationships that fundamentally change our business. So cold outreach, like I would say, if you really want to take it seriously, I would cold outreach every week. And if you're not where you want to be in terms of your sourcing, do it every day. Emails, Google wholesalers, Google suppliers, Google people in other countries, really get out there and just introduce yourself to people. And the biggest thing is the person you outreach to doesn't have to be the person that helps you. They can be like, hey, I can't help you at the moment, but also I actually know somebody in your town. I know somebody in your country. Let me connect you with them. Because the truth is, 98% of people don't do this. 98% of people are not picking up the phone. They're not typing out the email. And the beautiful thing is with ChatGPT now is you can do the email in 30 seconds, take another 30 seconds to make it humanized, and then send it out. So definitely cold outreach. So first, remove what doesn't need to be in your business. Second, cold outreach, and do it consistently. Don't just do it a couple times and then give up, because you don't want to take the salad abs approach, which is like, okay, I ate one salad. Where are my abs? You can't take that approach to cold outreach. It's returning back to the base model, which is we're playing the long game. So do consistent actions that are, going to add up in the long term. The third thing, I guess, would be focusing on your pace. So this is probably more like a maintenance perspective. At the end of the day, you could be in business for 1 year, or you could be in business for 20. And if you're in business for 20 years, you probably did all right. So in terms of maintenance and improving yourself over time and improving the business, you want to find something that I like to call your infinity pace. What is the pace that you could sustain forever? Because if you keep showing up relentlessly every day at that pace, you can gradually improve that pace and maybe do a little bit more. But the fact is like a Michael Phelps, I read something, it was like he didn't miss a day in the pool for 5 years straight. And he said every day he spent outside the pool, it took 2 days to get back. So if we don't miss a day, if we just continue to compound and stay consistent, and look, I'm not perfect at this, obviously, but it's something that I'm consciously thinking of, is how do I become the most consistent version of myself so that I don't have to interrupt the compounding?
For sure. I think one thing that people miss in terms of just sales growth is every day that you miss, your store shrinks. So then you're just getting further and further away from the goal, your target. And then you can get a little bit demotivated.
Absolutely.
I think we get chased a lot by what we consume as well, though. It's easy to get caught up in what other people are doing and then want to go faster because you feel like you should be better and you feel like you should be. But consistency builds stability. And isn't that what we're after? We want to complain when we don't have it. But to me, I've always had the view that I'd rather build something stable than be on the roller coaster of up and down and up and down, because I've been there, and mentally that's just draining as well.
100%. And I like to think of whenever my business has a problem, it's always a personal problem.
Mm-hmm.
Our business can be a reflection of the people that are working inside of it. So if we are inconsistent as operators, our business's results will be inconsistent as well. So what I like to say is, like, bring the standard to yourself and then bring that standard to the business, and your business will reflect that standard of yourself.
Which is what you do a lot of as well with your reading. And like, I see you work a lot on yourself, your mindset, the things you take in. And working on yourself is the best way to work on anything else in your life. If you start with yourself first, and you are a true reflection of that when I look at your content, especially the messages you share. I know you read books and you give your views on them. You also have a list of books and things that I haven't read any of them. I'm going to be very honest with you, but I did go through the list and I will start on the list. But what I found really fascinating is something that I only really discovered last year during the course of the year, is how important it really is to work on you, and that transfers into everything you do.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, it just comes down to you set the standard for yourself. And ultimately, the more that we learn, the more information we can take in, and also the more self-aware we can become. Because I feel like another thing is, like, a lot of business owners, and this is something that I realized early on that I thought would give me an asymmetric advantage, because that's what I'm constantly looking for. I'm looking for what are other people not doing that I can do, which will, help me. And that is, a lot of business owners love to run away from themselves and do the work on the business, when the work that they do on themselves will actually elevate their business 10x. So it could be simple as spending time by yourself at the start of the day and just sit there in silence and just sit there with your thoughts and, become more comfortable with just doing nothing and just being. Because at the end of the day, we're not human doings, we're human beings. And so our ability to just sit there and ruminate, because the biggest thing I've noticed, I mean, personally for me is, and I'm careful speaking about this because it's a loaded word, but when I meditate of a morning, I'm not doing anything flash. I'm sitting there in silence for 10 minutes, putting the iPhone timer on and just sitting there. Whenever a thought comes in, all I'm doing is I'm witnessing that thought and then letting it pass. And what happens is, once again, bring it back to the salad abs approach, right? People who meditate for 1 day or 2 days, they sit there for 2 minutes and they start feeling anxious. And they're like, oh, it's not working. And I would argue, like, oh, it is working. That ability to sit there and sit with the anxiety, that ability to sit there with the thoughts that, like, oh, I haven't thought about that in 3 years, is like that is also something that I think is super underrated. It's just not just working on the business, but working on you, and working on you in a manner that, helps your mind get that clarity.
For sure. So one of the things I like to do is, I call it like running into the wall each morning rather than meditation. But I found that if I didn't sit in silence every day, eventually the universe, the world, whatever, would put me in a place where I would become unwell, like with a cold or a flu or something. And then I would be forced to lay in bed and think those thoughts anyway. So it was so much easier to not run away from them and every day wake up, face them. I also call it like dropping into my heart to find out like where I have some niggles, what I need to resolve, maybe thinking through things that I've done in the past, and then facing the day, because I don't have anything to run from. I've already faced it all.
Absolutely. And that's the real work. Once you start your day doing the real work and then you go work on the business, it's like this shit's easy.
Yeah, for sure.
I was actually reading a study yesterday about this, about how they were polling people, and people today don't know how to occupy themselves without any direction or tools. So if you put someone in a space where they have free time, but no phones, no, added, people can't do that. They don't know how to occupy themselves because we're in a place where we don't want to be alone with our thoughts. We need distraction. We need to be busy. And it's really funny that you guys just spoke about this, because I was literally just contemplating this yesterday. Like, what would you do if you were in a room with nothing? Most people will try to find something to get away from being with themselves.
Absolutely. And a lot of that is just, we can go into that's a real rabbit hole there. But
Yeah.
the way I like to look at it is like, it's just taking a moment out of my day where I don't have stimulation. Because I'm sure there's some science somewhere where it's like, okay, if you take a break from dopamine for a little bit, then when you go back to it, the dopamine's going to hit harder. It's like, if I love eating strawberries and Nutella. If I don't have strawberries and Nutella for like a month and then I have it after a month, I'm like, man, this is amazing. That is a spiritual experience for me, So it is that. It's also like, if we're living in constant stimulation, we're constantly on the move. It is good to take a moment to just, as Sam said, if we don't slow down and we don't make an effort to develop our rest ethic to match our work ethic, we are going to get told by life, the universe, that, hey, it's time for you to slow down. Here's a week in bed where you're going to be sick. You know what I mean? So it's actually, anticipating in the future and, preparing for the future where we are having that rest in advance so that we can continue and we can maintain that infinity pace.
It's also amazing how little like true silence there is in the world. So like there's always like the hum of a TV or the hum of a fridge, a heater, cars driving past, and usually first thing in the morning it is a lot quieter because people haven't left for work and stuff. So it's one of those few times where I can actually just hear nothing, and therefore I get deeper with what I am able to process.
Absolutely.
I've got another question for you, and I think we kind of already touched on it, but I'm going to see. What's your go-to way to stay motivated?
So I've probably got a controversial view on this word because I'm really fascinated with, because of music, because of reading, because of language, and I like learning languages. I really like diving deep into the origin of words, so the etymology, right? So when it comes to motivation, that's not a word that I use very often, because I think there are ways in which we can get placed into certain situations where motivation is made redundant. The word doesn't exist. So, there's a lot of, I've spoken about this before, but it's like the frame of reference. So there's certain books that I've read, like Happiest Man on Earth by Eddie Jaku, and he's talking about his experience in Auschwitz. Then there's Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, once again talking about his experience in Auschwitz. There's Alistair Urquhart, the Forgotten Highlander, who's talking about his experience in 2 prisoner of war camps and then stuck on a boat. And so in these situations where and just to make it, it's super dramatic, but in these situations, a word like motivation doesn't exist. Either you do the thing or you don't survive. And so when it comes to, when you have these stories in your head, when I also witnessed my mum go for 8 years, it's like she didn't have an option. There was no day on which she could say, you know what, I'm not motivated today, I'm not going to do it. It's a very first world privilege that we have for us to wake up today and decide, you know what, I'm not motivated to do this thing. You go to somewhere like Thailand where, there might be a grandma on the street hustling noodles for 10 baht or like 50 cents equivalent. And what she's going to do at the end of her 12-hour shift is give all that money to her grandkids. So where is motivation in her day? You know what I mean? She's doing it for, and it goes back. You need to have a deeper reason. And if you have a deeper reason, then it doesn't matter whether I'm motivated or inspired today. It doesn't matter. I know where I'm headed and I've got to get there, and that's how it's going to be. I don't have that option to have, how do I stay motivated? I don't use that word. I just do the thing.
I love that answer. Yeah. Do you speak Thai out of curiosity?
A little bit. Yeah.
Do you speak other languages as well?
A little bit of Japanese.
Okay.
Yeah.
We were talking about it before you came on, so I thought I'd ask.
Yeah.
Right. I do think that you're right within that, because jumping back to the motivation, I know that like when I was in high school, despite not applying myself to the fullest of my capacities, I knew it was the way out of the situation that I had within my family. So I studied to a level where I didn't like separate myself from and become a nerd, but I was able to get the score that I needed to be able to get into the degree that I wanted. And then I was able to leave home. So there was no option. That was the only option. So yeah, when your back is to the wall, it's very helpful.
Absolutely. And the other part of that as well, I guess if I can just extend on that, is if you're doing something you're good at, you don't need as much motivation. in the traditional sense of the word. If you're good at something, you'll naturally just get up and do it. I think a lot of people, the reason why they need motivation is because they haven't reached past the point where they're good at the thing that they want to do. And it's like, I think that's why, going to the gym is so frustrating and hard for a lot of people, is because they haven't done the amount of reps that it would take for them to be passionate about it. It's no different with our businesses. Like, the moment we get really good at our business, the moment we get really good at our day, like our perfect business day where everything's moving smoothly, we're getting everything done, boom, we're done by this time. That on that day, you don't need motivation, because to return to what you said before, Sam, is like, you found that flow and that's carrying you through. You don't need motivation at that point.
That's true. I also feel like people like give up most things, like the salad abs that you referenced before, is we give up after like 3-4 days or after a few weeks and a few months, where it actually can take a considerably longer period of time than we think it does to be able to achieve the goals and levels that we want, or that we may need to hit the targets that we set for ourselves.
Absolutely. And I'm not perfect in that regard. I just think there's a few aspects in my life where like I've really got that down, where I'm like, okay, I'm going to stick with this thing for a long time and I'm not going to look for results. And then there's other areas in my life where I'm like, man, it's day 2. Why do I not have all the results yet? So I'm definitely not perfect in that regard, but it's something that I definitely do keep returning to.
Sorry.
No, you go, Helen.
I think also a big part of the problem here is that we try to imitate things that we think bring joy to other people. We try to be things that we think we should be. We try to do things because someone told us to do it. And in those cases, you need motivation to keep doing it. The truth is, you're not actually doing it out of a need or trying to solve your big why or your want. And that's when we get fed motivation. Like, you're just not going to the gym because you're not motivated enough. You're correct. That's because I don't have a need to be a bodybuilder. And I'm great that made you happy, but I don't have to. Do you know what I mean? Like, we fall short when we try to imitate.
You can say that again, Hanley. And the other thing is too, like, to make it specific to physical health as well, is like, I enjoy doing yoga more than I like doing other things in the gym. I would prefer to go outside and do pull-ups than go into the gym and do, bench press. It's just, you've also got to find, there's a lot of options, and it keeps returning to this idea of like self-awareness is the biggest thing that I can encourage people. And the one thing that I want people to take away from this conversation today is like, the reason why the 3 of us are doing what we're doing and why we are so unique in each path with our business, with our lives, is that we just did what worked for us. And that is the biggest thing that you can do, is just continue to ask questions, continue to be curious about yourself so that you can find yourself in a custom made situation, in a custom made business. Because as much as we can listen to the externals, what so-and-so is saying here, what this book is saying here, the best part of this experience, the human experience that we have, is finding the unique things that are unique to us, because that's where our strengths are, that's where our abilities are. And that's where ultimately, when it comes to business, is where you're going to make the best business for you, is when you lean into what makes you and what works for you specifically.
That kind of touches into the personal branding that we were talking about before the podcast. You have this profound ability to just be you and then marketing that to the wider people. I'm curious as to what your long-term vision is for the personal branding.
So I was saying this to Hanley briefly, but the way I use the word brand is reputation. So what do you want to be known for?
Yep.
So branding is essentially just association between 2 things. So if we have, for example, a Nike and a Michael Jordan, the combination between the 2 elevates both. And so when I think about personal brand and reputation, and I guess the long-term view for me, I think something that I've come, and it comes back down to, personal branding being self-acceptance. Whatever I do, I am the niche. Whatever Hanley does, Hanley is the niche. Whatever Sam does, Sam is the niche. And the more that we can lean into that, the more that we can actually stand out easier. And when you're in the marketplace, standing out is easy when you are, creativity is what you combine. So when you are one of one, and that's why my Instagram is literally called Kido the One. So there's that people know there's only one of me. the easier we stand out through those combinations of the things that we're uniquely interested in. Also, I know I'm meandering a bit, but I think that if people were focused on what makes them them, they would have a lot more fun in life. And I like to optimize for, am I actually enjoying what I'm doing? So when I get on social media and I talk about the OC, which is my favorite TV show, that doesn't win me points in the eBay seller community. That doesn't win me points necessarily with musicians or artists, but it adds on like another opportunity for people who are outside of those spheres to latch on and connect with me. And so if that's uniquely me, that I love the OC. All right, I love Strawberries and Nutella. All right, I love making rap and hip hop music. I love listening to 50 Cent while I grind on my business. Everything, all of these different aspects is enabling people to see, Kido as a person and not just Kido as some dude on the internet.
I love that. There's so many aspects to you that I would never have guessed. I would never have guessed OC was your favorite TV show. Is just for relating to last week's podcast, is Strawberries and Nutella your favorite snack? I was adding that in as the question at the end.
My favorite snack, I actually like biltong. So if there's any biltong, if there's any biltong companies that are listening to this, give me some equity and I'll promote your product. But I'll probably go through about 100 rounds of taste testing first to make sure I can attach my name to it.
My husband calls it the South African drug of choice. Like, I will buy it and he will clear like 3 packs a day. Like, we cannot get enough of it. It is incredible.
It is really good. It is really. I found a photo the other day. My grandma had it on her phone, and she sent it to me. And it's a photo of me at like, I want to say 13, making jerky. So I have a photo of me making jerky at 13. Like I was like to my grandma, I was like, listen, I want to buy it. I want to eat so much more of this. Like, can we just make it? And I don't know, this is like maybe early entrepreneur. Like, I don't want to pay this money. So can we just buy a bunch and make it ourselves? Like, looking back, it's really funny. But yeah, so I've got a photo of me making jerky at 12, 13. And yeah, I don't know. It's just interesting. So yeah, to answer your question, biltong, goated snack.
I don't even know what that is. I feel left out.
It's just like it's like salted air dried meat. It's like jerky. It's similar to jerky, but I prefer biltong.
I find that offensive. It's not like jerky. It is the South African delicacy.
Haley, I'm making it easy for the people who don't know what biltong is for them to like mentally associate it. Because I feel like jerky and biltong get branded together a lot, especially in Australia. Like a lot of the companies that make jerky also make biltong, even though they're definitely different. Yeah.
Interesting.
I have a question about the branding. I delved heavily back into your content because I've watched most of it, but I went back in because I have this opinion that for me and my business branding just isn't something we need to focus on right now. But I was very fascinated by your journey. So I do have a question. Who do you think your audience is? Who do you make content for?
This is an interesting one. I make content for people who are getting after it. And that could mean any variation of business, of art. I'm uniquely positioned as an artist entrepreneur. I'm a hybrid, but I also love writing. So I went back going back to the idea of self-acceptance. Like I had to go back and look for examples of like people that I would be more like. And the people who I could find was like, and I'm not at their level, obviously, but the examples that I was looking at was like a Benjamin Franklin, a Leonardo da Vinci, people who didn't live within the limits that society had placed around them, people who uniquely followed their curiosity and their want for knowledge and followed that as far as it would go. And so, when you ask me who's my audience, I'm like, well, people who are getting up every day and showing up for themselves and their family. And if I had to specify it for YouTube specifically, I would say business owners. I would say entrepreneurs. I would say hustlers. I would also say just, what I'm noticing more recently, especially as I talk about my mom and my childhood, is a lot of mothers are starting to resonate with what I'm saying. And I think it just comes down to, people who are doing it for the bigger picture, people who are playing for the long game. That's my audience.
Up until about 10 o'clock last night, I decided that the best thing I ever did was gave up Instagram and branding, and that wasn't for me. And then you said one thing, and I was like, oh, why? You, I was watching one of your reels, and you talked about how your brand, your content is basically an employee that's working for you 24/7 out there selling you and your product. And I was like, oh, well, if you put it that way. Okay, and I don't think people see this, and I didn't see this. I always saw content and like Instagram, and maybe it's the way I was using it as a self-serving, right? And maybe it's because at that point I hadn't really worked on myself, and I saw it more as, self-serving. You get the likes, you get to post your journey for everyone to see, but you're actually just posting for yourself. Well, I was at least. Until you said that, and I realized how much of a leg up it can be if you view what you're putting out there as an employee that's actually working for the business.
Absolutely. I think so. Just to give you like some context as well, is like I have certain clips that I know are going to perform better. And then I also have clips that I make purely because I know it's going to help one person. And of course, the clips that I make to help one person, they get 20, 30 likes, 100 likes. They get far less. They don't perform as well ever. But the way I look at it is, if I can post 1,000 times and help 1,000 people once each, like that's goodwill, reputation that you cannot buy. And so, especially it does come down to how you're approaching the platform, how you're approaching content. Like I would say this year, specifically 2025, is when I've really gone, okay, you know what, I'm going to give this a good go. Not that I hadn't made content before, I'd made a bunch, but in terms of like, okay, I'm going to be very conscious with the direction that I'm taking this in, and also experiment as well and try different things, and maybe talk about the OC, maybe go on the podcast and talk about strawberries and Nutella, maybe, post about aspects of my business that maybe I'm not sure if people really care about. But what's fascinating is that, like, it's very, there's a lot of ego involved. There's a lot of, I would say, self-obsession involved when we think we know what's going to work and what's going to resonate. Yeah. And so I only, I said before, I know which ones are probably going to perform better than the others. But at the same time as well, like all day, every day, whether I post at 6 a.m. or 6 p.m., I don't know how something's going to perform. And so my idea is just keep showing up. Just keep showing up. And I know if I do that, like, eventually I'm going to have this one might perform better than the other. But also I'm just making connections that, once again, money can't buy.
Your platform growth has been huge this year. I'm pretty sure your Instagram's gone from like a couple thousand to like 14,000. Your TikTok's ticked over 30,000, and I'm pretty sure that was mostly this year. Like, I remember you read the 10X book sometime towards the start of the year, and then you were like, let's just pour fuel on this. And it's proof that if you do post and you do follow the model, it does work.
Yeah. And something I want to say there is, like, when you do decide, for anybody who's interested in making content or creating in general, is when you start posting consistently, your views are going to go down, and that's okay. What you need to, and something that I had to come to terms with was, okay, am I okay with this clip getting 100 views and it only helping one person? And I was like, every time I'm going to be like, yes, if I'm helping one person, that's all, my job's done. I'm done. And so, a lot of people will say, here, you've got to post on a schedule. You got to post once daily. You got to do like all that. Like, I don't listen to that, because I think that if you show up consistently and you're you, and you bring what makes you to the market, you're going to stand out. You're going to find momentum. And the main thing is just staying consistent. Like, the biggest thing with your guys' podcast is how many episodes you've got out. After this episode, somebody can go back and binge watch you guys. And that is huge power. So the other thing, Hanley, is like, I don't think you necessarily need to show up on Instagram. The fact that you keep showing up on YouTube is enough, because people are like, you know what I mean? Yeah. There's Sam and Hanley, they're crushing it. So I think for Instagram specifically though, like, I'm very intentional with like my algorithm. So what I'll do is I'll train it. If I see something I don't like, I literally go to the setting and click not interested. And that's how, that is high friction if you think about it, because like, I'm going to take 3 seconds every time I see something. But over time, going back to, a month, 2-3 months, you'll start being fed stuff that, like, I go on my phone and I'm inspired. I put my phone down and get back to work.
Yeah.
And that's a different type of algorithm. And ultimately, the algorithm is just a mirror. So if we don't like our algorithm, we can just train it and be like, okay, I don't like this. Let me click not interested. Okay, I saw this clip. Let me literally watch the whole thing, click like, leave a comment, and then it'll start, you know? So
Yeah.
That's been so powerful, like just not being on Instagram as much, but also I've been doing the same thing. I've been trading my Instagram, and the minute I see something I don't like, I will not interested. I'll block whoever the person is. Don't recommend me this. And my feed is now, for the first time since I've ever had Instagram, a true reflection of what I care about and what I'm interested in.
absolutely. And I think a lot of that too is like just follow, you know, we need to curate our digital environment as much as we curate our physical environment. If we want to get fitter, we're not going to put chocolates on the kitchen counter next to our bed. You know, when we go out in our shed, you know, when we're working, we're not going to put chocolates everywhere. That's not going to help us. So it's no different with the digital environment. Is like you need to be very, and it comes back down to this idea of just being conscious of what you're consuming. Doesn't matter whether it's food, doesn't matter whether it's the TV shows you're watching. The more aware we are of what is going in is, you know, we'll be able to predict what comes out as a result. And that's not to say, you know, you can't eat junk food every once in a while. You can't watch some trash TV show. It's just bringing that awareness to the things that we do, which is very important because unfortunately, you know, a lot of people are not aware and then they're wondering, you know, why is it when I eat crap and I watch crap that I feel like crap? Well, start with what's going in. So
Bringing it back to the people, like 100 people only seeing your thing, I think people underestimate how many people 100 people is. Like that's still an enormous amount of people. Like if you put them all in a room, like it's a lot of people that you're speaking in front of. Most likely, like someone like me, there's like 400 views on a podcast episode. I wouldn't be able to get up on stage and talk in front of 400 people. I would have a panic attack and have to leave. So I think even just getting 10 views, like you're touching 10 people in a way that you wouldn't otherwise get to. And that's a real like blessing.
the other thing I like to think about as well is just the waterfall effect. So if you post, say, 50 times, right, and you might have one that performs better than all the rest, but every time you post something new, somebody who likes that first clip is going to go back and watch the second. They might watch the third. They might watch the fourth. And I've noticed this like a lot with my music is whenever I release a new song, people will go back and listen to like 5, 10, 20 songs. And so my entire catalog is you know, building up over time. And it's no different with content. It's like every time you guys publish, there's going to be somebody who watches it and goes back and watches another 5 and binge watches. And then, you know, it's the rising tides raises all ships. And so that's how I like to look at it is I might be on season 1. I might be on episode 2 and nobody's watching. But one day I'm going to be on season 7 and I'm going to have the cult following and people are going to go back and they're going to have to watch season 1 anyway to catch up with the story. It doesn't mean that those initial results, those low views didn't mean anything. If anything, the value of those now goes up because everybody gets to see where I started. Everybody gets to see the genesis. And now people are like, man, I loved season 1, episode 3. Now that we're on season 27 of Grey's Anatomy, you know?
Yeah.
So I think it's underrated for people to be able to see that progression and see that journey because that's the story. That's where the value is. I don't think people respect as much when they can't see where you started. If you just pop out, if somebody, for example, in the music industry, if somebody just pops out and all of a sudden they're on radio, it's like, where did this person come from? Whereas if there's certain artists who you've seen grinding away for 10 years and then they get the hit and then the fan base that was with them the whole time is like, man, finally they did it. Like, this is great. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of value to documenting the journey no matter where you're at.
I would like to touch on new music a little bit. So as far as I'm aware, the only song that you've actively like pushed out was your 4K God. And my understanding is you've got over 1 million like streams on that one song, all independent.
Yeah, so 4K God is the only song that I've promoted and it has like 1 million streams. But to bring it back to the idea of the catalog, the rest of my catalog also has 1 million streams. Yeah. And I've never promoted those.
That's incredible.
So, so every day, like somebody will find me from this podcast, find me from this conversation and be like, you know what? I'm curious. What's Kido doing on Instagram? What's Kido doing on YouTube? What's his music sound like? I'm sure somebody's listening right now is like, man, this is interesting. And so the way that I look at it is, okay, the more that I can show up, the more that I can keep putting that work in, the more that I can stay diligent with the inputs and the outputs, you know, time is going to take care of itself. And it's something I keep referring back to is like, father time takes care of people with good habits, and mother nature is brutal with those that don't have good habits. And so the more that I can stay consistent, the more that I can, you know, keep doing the thing I know I need to do, results will take care of themselves.
That's so cool. Before we wrap it up, if there was one piece of advice that you could give your younger self just starting out, what would it be?
Are we talking like business specifically, or just like the human Kido?
The human Kido. The little Kido.
I would say this. Okay, let me think about this one.
While you think, I'm going to ask Hanley, is your opinion on branding changed, Hanley?
It really has. It really has. I think another thing that also relates into what he just said about the catalog is in one of his other pieces of content, he mentioned how even the people who are watching, but they don't comment, just the silent lurkers, they might still be mentioning your name in a room full of opportunities. And that's another thing that really hit me. And I was like, you might not see the reactions. You might not have it directed at you, but it could still be directed at opportunity. And I think that combined with the fact of looking at your content as just another employee makes me want to sit down and have a rethink. I don't know if I'll get into it or where I want to go with it, but I think the beauty of what he is doing is it makes you think, it makes you consider things. And I think that's a very powerful thing to have in creating content.
Absolutely. I think at the end of the day, you just have to find what works for you and do that. Don't worry about what everybody else is doing. Because there's so many different ways that you can approach this. And something I keep returning to as well is that, like, a lot of the time there's not, you know, adults don't exist. Everybody is just kind of making it up as they go. It doesn't matter, you know, and I've been privileged to speak to some people who are doing really well in life from a financial perspective, from a spiritual perspective. And then you look at other aspects of their life and they're like, man, this guy, like, what? They're doing well over here, but over here, they're like, what? Yeah. Low IQ. You know what I mean? So I think that's the biggest thing. And something I keep returning to is, you know, as much as it looks like everybody else has it figured out, nobody has it figured out. And I think it's wise to never envy anybody else, because for everything that somebody has, a price was paid. That would probably be my message to the younger me, I think.
Mate, next week it's just going to be you. The podcast is now just Kido.
We need a part 2 though. I've still got, like, I can go for another 2-3 hours. Like, I'm really motivated, or not supposed to use the word motivated, but I'm like, hey, I'm gonna
Fired
go
up, pumped up. It's fine. Let's go.
I know.
So next week, Kido.
Okay. Now, people in the comments, look, if the people in the comments want me to come back, they can let us know. So look, if anybody who's watching or listening or who made it to this point, I appreciate you. Thank you for being here.
I really appreciate
you for being here.
Yeah. I really
thank you guys for having me. I just want to say as well, like, before we finish, is like, what you guys have done with this podcast is really cool, because even if we're not getting, you know, thousands of views, tens of thousands of views, the people who are watching are the right people. They're the people who will resonate with what we're speaking about. They're the people who are working on themselves and getting after it. And, you know, you just can't compete with that.
I personally think that there's like a bit of a gap in the market of, there's a lot of like the practicalities and like, this is how you list an item and this is how you can set up your light station and post items. But like the more in-depth, like who you are as a person, how you think, there's not a lot of like self-discovery on the reselling business space in Australia, but also the world.
Absolutely. And I think that's like 95% of it is the philosophy, the mindset. because without that, you're not going to last very long.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like that's in every aspect of life, though. Like, not just in business, it's across the board in everything you're doing.
100%.
But thank you so much for coming on. It's been really amazing to get to speak to you, and I hope we do get to speak to you again. I have taken so much away from it, not only this conversation, but going through and watching all your content. I was one of those people who started with one and then just went and watched all of them. So the waterfall effect is real. Thank you, everyone, for listening. If you have any questions for Kido, just put them in the comments. We'll forward them on, or he'll have to come back and answer them. So the more questions you have for them, the best. But we thank you all for sticking with us and getting through this. And thank you again, Kido, for taking time out to speak to us. I really appreciate it. But have a good week, everyone.
Thanks,
See you
guys.
next time.
Thanks,
Thank
Kido.
you.